Let's welcome in. He's the general manager of the defending NFC champion. He's Les Snead. He joins us here live at Rams training camp in Irvine, California at UCI. Les, how are you?
I'm good. I was just coming over. We because of Todd Gurley's knee situation, we re-signed Steven Jackson in case we needed some. Ultimately, that was just a joke on probably national. It's going to get headlines. Ultimately, we wanted to allow Steven to sign and be a Ram for a day so that he can retire and be a Ram forever, since he's the all-time leading rusher in our franchise history.
And it's interesting. I think to the layman out there, they might go like, "Oh yeah, Steven Jackson was awesome." Like Jerome Bettis was a Ram. He was amazing. Eric Dickerson was amazing when he was a Ram. I had the 2,000-yard season. Marshall Faulk was a Ram. Like, you go back, like, Steven Jackson's your all-time leading rusher? That actually, I had no idea. That surprises me.
Obviously with this, artist, our PR person was showing me that list, and you go down that list, and there's definitely some legends, on that list.
I have not seen Steven Jackson. Is he around? Does he still look like he's wearing the Batman suit? Like,
no,
that dude was the most physically imposing back.
It's interesting. He is probably a 20-pound leaner Steven, but I think the thing that is most noticeable is he now has a very, very short haircut, so he looks like an IBM executive instead of that, Hulk that was coming out of the tunnel back in the day.
Okay, Les Snead joining us on the Doug Gottlieb Show. You brought up Todd Gurley. Let's go back to last year this time when you didn't have to. He wasn't holding out. You gave him a contract extension a year before you had to. What was the logic in doing that? Because it caught some in the league by surprise.
Well, ultimately, let's take where he's at now, right? Since he's been drafted, he has more yards from scrimmage than any human in that time frame. He's about 6 yards more than Julio Jones. He's got more TDs than anybody in that time frame. So ultimately, he's a pillar in our locker room. Locker rooms are made of humans. And guess what? You hear it all the time wherever, right? It's the people that make a difference. And ultimately, sometimes in sports, right, with the analytics and all of that, it's almost like players are commodities. Ultimately, they're people. They're leaders in our locker room. That human being deserved to be one of the more, well-paid runners in the league, and that's what we did.
Okay, so Jerry Jones is sitting there sending you Christmas cards, right? Because now Ezekiel Elliott's sitting there going like, "Hey, I'm in the same spot as he was in. Why don't you reward me?" Is there any thought into what it does to the dynamic of other star players in your own locker room or to the rest of the league, in that you gave him a deal a year before most people?
Every time there is a deal done, let's call it the market resets.
Yes.
And that's based on what? Guarantees, average per year, when you resign in terms of how many years he's been in, things like that. So each time a player is rewarded for, let's call his earned success, it does reset the market, and we all have to react to that. But ultimately what we like to do is somewhat proact to that, right, instead of react, and try to definitely reward our pillars.
I'm wondering what you're able to now sit back over the past couple months, and I know you're doing your job and getting your 90-man ready, getting ready to cut down. Of course, you had your draft picks as well. But there's been various reactions to what you guys decided to do and how it played out. I would deem it, as a neutral bystander, as an incredible success story, right? But you guys went all in. You took guys on one-year contracts. You made some risky moves. You bring in Ndamukong Suh. And even though you didn't win the Super Bowl, you won the NFC. And to consider where you were the year before, losing at home to the Falcons, or 2 years before that when you had to make a coaching change, that's an incredible win. But from your perspective, how do you, as of right now, how would you feel like last year's moves, as risky as they were, played out?
Well, I think ultimately the 2018 season, when you're a conference champion, it was a successful season. The good thing about those moves is the majority of those players that we acquired are still on the roster. And really, Ndamukong being the more one-year player, but we traded for Aqib Talib, and he is still here. We traded for Marcus Peters. He is still. We ultimately traded for Dante. He's still here. We traded for Brandon Cooks. He's still here. So the plan last year wasn't just really a one-hit type wonder type year, those guys were going to still be around. The key from last year is this: we know what we're capable of. It's no longer a vision. But when you sit in that seat, the best thing you can do, and what we've been doing since, let's call it that Super Bowl, is what are we not capable of, and how do we improve those things? It's easy to know what you are.
Okay, so tell me, your self-scout in what you were missing for that one game. Your self-scout in the what weren't you that you need to be in order to win one more game.
Well, we have, and it's not a joking manner, but we've kind of joked internally that I don't think any of us are smart enough to figure out what could we have done different to let's call it, take a 3-3 game deep into the fourth quarter and actually win that thing, right? Yeah, I don't think there's any moves you can do this year to go, okay, we'll win the last 8 minutes of the Super Bowl next year. So I think there's some big things, and I'll keep that inside of what we're trying to do in terms of roster, in terms of offensive, defensive schemes, in terms of other processes in sports science to go, you know what, let's make sure we continuously improve the Rams. Let's make sure the 19 Rams are better than the 18 Rams. Not necessarily looking at we got to win 14 games now instead of 13 or anything like that. It's just from a down-to-down basis, how can we be better in 19 than we were in 18?
This is going to be a challenging preseason for you because you're only here for a couple weeks. Then you go to Napa, and you got a couple of scrimmages with the Raiders. And then you got that trip to Hawaii.
Yes.
Which is a short trip. And, like, look, you know how coaches get. They're like, wait, we started here. And you had this 2 years ago, right, where Jeff Fisher, you guys had just moved out here and you're moving. And that can rattle some cages and make it more difficult to evaluate. You're about health. And as Sean told us, he's always been a guy who's not as focused on the preseason for the younger play, for the older players as the younger players. What about the challenges of all of that movement in a short period of time before you ever play your first game?
And then we got to go to London. What I do like, big picture overall, what I love about Sean is he's all about, we always say in our building, right, the main thing's improving Rounds football. So ultimately he's trying to, once we get to here, it's all about how do we get better today more better today than yesterday, right? But the nice thing about the rows of those thorns is the monotony of training camp can be cut down because, okay, we're here and we do a couple of scrimmages against Chargers, then we get to go to the Raiders and we do a couple against them, and then, Hawaii, you get to do that. So the monotony's cut down, but there's still a thorn of maybe more travel.
All right, two guys I want to ask you about quickly, two older players. One is Eric Weddle, who I thought he might walk away from the game. He's like a football savant in terms of ability to get guys lined up, but there are always questions on a defensive back, a position of such incredible athleticism. Can he still run? What was the thought process? Because he wasn't on the market long before you scooped him up. Take me through the thought process of Eric Weddle's available. Let's get him and make him kind of the centerpiece at the back end of our defense.
Well, it is interesting. You probably started in one of our travels last year where we traveled across the country. We were going to have to do it anyway against the Ravens, and we were practicing against those guys. But Sean felt, I call it the central nervous system of Eric Weddle. He could feel his knack, his instincts, his preparation showing up in the angles and the geometry he took. Take 40. He's probably slower 40 now than he was when he came out, whatever that was, coming out of Utah. Ultimately, he might have got from point A to point B faster based on all of those. I call it central nervous system working together. So that kind of started his resume for Sean probably started sparring against each other in some 7-on-7s about a year ago today.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Of course, you got Clay as well, and then you still got Andrew Whitworth on the offensive line. Got those old heads to get the young guys lined out. Listen, Les, congrats on what was an amazing season last year.
Thank you.
Best of luck and continued health to your entire club because that's the big thing with training camp.
That's the most luck we would need, right?
If everybody's healthy.
Yes.
Wrap those guys in bubble wrap. Thanks so much for letting us be out here.
Appreciate that. Thanks for having me.
Les Snead, the general manager of the NFC champion, the L.A. Rams. Wrap it up from Rams Camp, upcoming next. Hi, I'm Doug Gottlieb from Fox Sports Radio, and you need to subscribe to the Fox Sports Radio YouTube channel where you can hear and see me. Why not? Plus everybody else who's awesome here in Fox Sports Radio.